They laughed at the widow who inherited only a horned ox, but when they discovered its value, Gladys Mitchell never imagined that at 70 years old she would be walking the dusty streets of Hope Springs, leading by a rope an ox with enormous horns and unkempt fur. Laughter echoed behind her, coming from groups of neighbors who were amused by that unusual scene. That was exactly what her late husband Harold had left her as his sole inheritance. While the other children received the house, the small farm, and some savings, all that was left for Gladys was Colonel, the nearly 15-year-old ox that Harold had raised on the back of the property. "Just look, everyone! Mrs. Gladys has become a cattle driver," shouted Mildred, her sister-in-law, provoking laughter among the women chatting at the bakery door. "At her age, it would have been better to just sell that animal to the slaughterhouse," commented another neighbor, shaking her head with disdain. Gladys kept walking without looking back, but each word stung like a thorn. Colonel walked gently beside her, as if understanding that they were both alone in the world now. The truth was that Gladys had no idea what to do with the animal. Harold had always taken care of everything related to the animals, and she had dedicated herself to the vegetable garden and household chores. Now, 3 weeks after her husband's passing, the bills were starting to pile up, and Colonel needed feed, vaccines, and care that she barely knew about. "Gladys, you need to be realistic," said Mildred, catching up to her on the street. "That ox will only be an expense. I know a guy at the slaughterhouse who might give about $300 for it. It's cash in hand, no hassle." $300 for an animal this size? Gladys stopped and stared at her sister-in-law. "Do you think I was born yesterday, Mildred?" "Gladys, this ox is already old. Look at his face, all worn out. At the slaughterhouse, at least you get something. If you wait longer, it might not even be worth that." Gladys observed Colonel, who was calmly chewing a clump of grass growing between the stones of the sidewalk. The animal really had nothing special about its appearance. It was big, had disproportionate horns and a coat that never seemed to be in the right place, but something inside her said not to accept the first offer that came along. "I'll think about your offer," she replied, continuing her way home. That night, sitting on the porch of her small house, Gladys counted and recounted the savings left after paying for Harold's funeral expenses. It was a little over $800, enough for 2 months, 3 at most if she was very frugal. Colonel was tied to a tree in the backyard, placidly ruminating. "What am I going to do with you, old boy?" she murmured, watching the animal through the kitchen window. The next morning, Gladys decided to look for work at the open-air market that took place on Tuesdays and Fridays in the central square. Maybe she could get a spot as a helper at a vegetable or fruit stall. She tied Colonel with extra care, left water and some grass she cut from the vacant lot next door, and left feeling hopeful. The first stop was at Mrs. Dorothy's stall, who had been selling vegetables at the market for over 20 years. "Oh, Gladys, I'm so sorry about Harold. He was a good man," said Dorothy, arranging heads of lettuce. "But about work here, my dear. I only need people who can carry weight, stand all day. At your age—" The answer was the same at all the other stalls, always polite, always with pity, but always with a polite refusal. Gladys returned home with a heavy heart and the certainty that her options were running out fast. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot who are just starting out. Now continuing. It was on Thursday that the first interested party in the Bull appeared. Gladys was hanging laundry on the clothesline when she heard Colonel bellowing strangely, as if bothered by something. She went out to check and found a middle-aged man observing the animal over the low fence that separated her backyard from the vacant lot. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Vernon. I work in livestock buying and selling," said the man, removing a faded cap. "I heard you were interested in getting rid of this bull." "Who said that?" "Oh, neighborhood talk, you know. Small town, everyone knows everything. Can I take a closer look at the animal?" Gladys hesitated, but allowed him into the yard. Vernon circled around Colonel, touching his coat, checking his teeth, observing his hooves. The bull remained calm, just watching the stranger with his eyes. "How much do you want for him?" "I don't know yet if I want to sell. Look, I'll be frank with you, ma'am. This bull is past his productive age. The horns are too big, a sign the genetics aren't good for breeding. I can offer $500 for him. It's a fair price considering the circumstances. Gladys felt a pang of irritation. First Mildred with 300, now this Vernon with 500. It seemed like everyone was in a hurry to get rid of Colonel for her. I'll think about it. Ma'am, can I come back tomorrow? It's just that I have another interested party for another animal here in the region, but if you decide quickly, I can prioritize your deal. After Vernon left, Gladys felt uneasy. There was something about the man's haste in the way he observed Colonel that didn't seem to match the little importance he claimed to give the animal. If the bull was so common and worthless, why were so many people showing up interested? That afternoon, she decided to do something she had never done before, research cattle on the internet. The town library had computers available for the public, and Gladys, who barely knew how to use the equipment, asked the librarian for help. I want to know about bulls, about prices, things like that, she explained, embarrassed. The young woman, Jennifer, helped her navigate the websites. Gladys discovered there were specialized breeds, award-winning lineages, specific characteristics that increased an animal's value. But the technical language was hard to understand, and the pictures of bulls on the screen didn't look much like Colonel. Do you have a picture of your bull, Mrs. Gladys? Maybe I can help identify the breed, offered Jennifer. I don't have a picture, but I can describe him. He's big, has very large horns. The color is kind of yellowish. Hard to tell just from the description. The best would be for a veterinarian to take a look. Here in town there's Dr. Nathan. He's new, but they say he's very competent. The name stuck in Gladys's head. A veterinarian could at least say if Colonel was healthy, if he needed any special care. Maybe he could even give a more realistic estimate of the animal's value. Dr. Nathan Bradley had graduated only 2 years ago and had chosen Hope Springs to open his first clinic because rents were low and the competition was less. He was still struggling to win the trust of the local ranchers, who preferred more experienced veterinarians or treated animals with traditional methods. When Gladys appeared at his small clinic on Friday morning, Nathan was organizing medicine on almost empty shelves. The lack of clients was tightening his finances, and he knew he would have to consider looking for a job in another town if the situation didn't improve soon. Good morning, Doctor. I'm Gladys Mitchell. I wanted to know if you could take a look at my bull. Nathan was cheered by the possibility of work. Of course, Mrs. Gladys. Is the animal sick? I don't know. Actually, I don't understand anything about bulls. My husband used to take care of everything, but he passed away a month ago. Now I'm thinking of selling the animal, but I wanted to be sure he's well to know roughly how much he's worth. I can make a house call. My fee is 50 reis, but if it's just a basic evaluation, I can do it for 30. Gladys hesitated. 30 reis was money she couldn't waste, but her curiosity about Colonel was growing by the day. All right. Can you come to my house this afternoon? At 3 in the afternoon, Nathan arrived at Gladys's house carrying a case with instruments and a notebook for notes. He was a young man with a friendly appearance, dark hair and glasses, who conveyed seriousness despite his young age. Colonel was in the shade of the tree, lying calmly. When Nathan approached, the animal slowly stood up and remained steady, observing the visitor with curiosity but without showing nervousness. "What a beautiful animal," murmured Nathan, and Gladys noted the sincerity in his voice. The veterinarian began the examination. He checked the eyes, the muzzle, the breathing. He asked Gladys to make Colonel walk a little to observe his movement. He examined the hooves, the coat, the teeth. The more he observed, the more interested he became. "Mrs. Gladys, how long have you had this ox?" Harold brought him home when he was still a little calf. That was about 15 years ago. "Why?" "Do you know where he came from? Who were his parents?" Harold never really said. He said he got him in a deal he made with a breeder from outside the region. "Why? Is there something wrong with him?" Nathan was writing in the notebook, but Gladys could tell he was excited about something. "Nothing wrong, it's just that he has some interesting characteristics. Look at the conformation of the head, the width of the chest, the tail set." Gladys didn't understand anything he was talking about, but she saw that the young veterinarian's interest was genuine. "Doctor, I'll ask directly. How much is this ox worth?" Nathan stopped writing and looked at her. "It's hard to say without knowing the exact lineage, but I can say he's worth well over 500 rees." "Well, over how much?" "I need to do some research. Are you in a hurry to sell?" I'm in a hurry to sort out my finances, but if this ox is worth more than what they're offering, I'm in no hurry to be cheated." Nathan smiled at the widow's clever reply. "Give me a few days. I'll research his breed, consult some books. If it's what I suspect, you might have a small fortune in your backyard." Gladys felt her heart race. "Fortune how?" "I don't want to raise expectations, but I've seen animals with similar characteristics fetching very high figures at specialized auctions. Let me confirm first." After Nathan left, Gladys was agitated. She couldn't even prepare dinner properly, so great was her anxiety. She sat on the porch and kept watching Colonel, trying to see in him what the veterinarian had seen. Mildred appeared in the late afternoon, as she did almost every day since Harold passed away, always with an air of someone doing a favor, always with suggestions about how Gladys should organize her life. "I heard you called a veterinarian here today," she said, sitting in the chair beside her. "I hope you didn't waste money." "How did you know?" "Gladys, this town has no secrets. Jennifer from the library mentioned you were researching oxen yesterday. Today the new veterinarian shows up here, 2 + 2, right?" Gladys noticed the disapproving tone in her sister-in-law's voice. "And what's the problem?" "The problem is, you're complicating a simple thing. You should have just sold that ox to Vernon. Now you're going to pay a veterinarian, get your hopes up about an animal that isn't worth anything special, and in the end, you'll be disappointed. Mildred, you don't know if he's worth something special or not. I know Harold never said this bull was different from the others. If it were, he would have mentioned it. Your husband wasn't one to keep secrets." Gladys was bothered by the comment. It was true that Harold had never mentioned anything special about Colonel. He always treated the animal like a common bull, useful for a potential sale if money got tight. But if that was the case, why were so many people showing up interested? Why Dr. Nathan's reaction? "Besides," continued Mildred, "this young vet is just starting out. He needs clients. He's probably making up a story to squeeze money out of you." The seed of doubt was planted. That night, Gladys could barely sleep, tossing and turning in bed and wondering if she wasn't being naive. Maybe Mildred was right. Maybe she was clinging to unrealistic hopes when she should be practical and accept one of the offers that had come in. On Saturday morning, Vernon returned, as he had promised. "So, Mrs. Gladys, have you thought about my proposal?" "I'm still thinking." "Look, to make it easier, I can go up to 600. It's the most I can do for this animal. If you accept, I can pick him up still today." Gladys looked at Colonel, who was grazing peacefully. $600 wouldn't solve her situation for long, but it was immediate money. Nathan had asked for a few days, but what if he came back saying the bull wasn't worth anything special after all? "Can you come back Monday? Then I'll give you a definitive answer." Vernon didn't seem pleased with the answer, but he agreed. After he left, Gladys felt more confused than ever. She was wavering between the hope that Colonel could be her financial salvation and the fear that she was fooling herself. Sunday passed slowly. Gladys avoided leaving the house so she wouldn't have to hear comments from the neighbors. She spent most of the time observing Colonel, trying to discover what was so special about him. But no matter how much she looked, she saw only a large bull, with sizable horns and a gentle manner. It was on Sunday night that she remembered something important. Harold had an old box in the bedroom closet where he kept documents related to the animals he had raised over the years. Whenever he bought or sold an animal, he would note everything in notebooks and keep the purchase papers. Gladys had never touched that box, considering it her husband's exclusive business. But now, with Colonel being her only inheritance, perhaps there was some useful information inside. The box was high up in the closet, dusty and heavy. Gladys had difficulty getting it down and almost spilled the contents on the floor when she finally managed. Inside were several black-covered notebooks, yellowed invoices from years past, old photographs of animals and some folded certificates. She began to leaf through the notebooks. Harold's handwriting was hard to decipher, but she managed to understand that he noted everything: date of purchase, date of sale, prices, characteristics of the animals, health problems. It was a detailed record of over 20 years of raising cattle. It was in the oldest notebook that she found the reference to Colonel. The handwriting was shakier. indicating Harold was already advanced in age when he made the notes. Calf bought from John Watson of St. George Ranch, March 2010. Special animal, different lineage. John said the father was a prize-winning stud, but didn't want to give more details. Paid $800, expensive for a calf, but John guaranteed it was worth the investment. Told me to keep it safe, that one day I'd understand why. Gladys reread the passage several times. $800 for a calf in 2010 was really a high amount by the region's standards, and that note about special animal and different lineage was striking. Why had Harold never told her this? She continued searching in the more recent notebooks. She found other scattered references to Colonel, always with notes like grows well, interesting characteristics remain, seems to confirm what John said, but never anything specific about what made the animal special. On Monday morning, Gladys was eager to tell Dr. Nathan about her discovery. She called the clinic as soon as it opened and scheduled a new appointment for the afternoon. She also decided she would not sell Colonel to Vernon until she had more information about the bull's true origin. When Vernon showed up around 10 in the morning, Gladys was already prepared for the conversation. "So, Mrs. Gladys, can I pick up the bull today?" "Actually, Vernon, I've decided not to sell for now." The man's face hardened. "Why did you change your mind?" "I found out my husband paid a good sum for this animal when it was a calf. It seems there's something special about it that I don't understand yet." "You're making a mistake. An old bull is a guaranteed loss, and if it gets sick, you'll spend more on the vet than the animal is worth." "It's a risk I'm willing to take," Vernon insisted for a few more minutes, even offering $700, but Gladys stood firm in her decision. He left clearly displeased, muttering something about a stubborn woman. Dr. Nathan arrived promptly at 2 in the afternoon, carrying some books in addition to his instrument case. "Mrs. Gladys, I researched your bull and have some interesting news. But first, did you find out anything about his origin?" Gladys showed Harold's notebooks and told him about the calf purchase. Nathan was visibly excited by the information. "That makes a lot of sense. I spent the entire weekend studying Colonel's characteristics, and I'm almost certain he is descended from a very rare lineage." "What kind of lineage?" Nathan opened one of the books he brought and showed photos of bulls with similar characteristics. "This is the Caracou Caldeano breed, an almost extinct variation of the traditional Caracou. Look at the resemblance to your Colonel." Gladys looked at the photos. There were indeed impressive similarities in the shape of the head, the size of the horns, the coloration of the coat. "And what does that mean?" "It means if it's confirmed he's from that lineage, his value could be extremely high. Pure Caracou Caldeano is very rare. There are breeders who pay fortunes just for the genetic material of these animals." "A fortune of how much?" "I've seen studs of this breed sold for over $100,000, and that was when the market was weak." Gladys felt her legs go weak. $100,000 or more. It depends on the purity of the lineage, the animal's condition, buyer interest. Your Colonel is in excellent physical shape for his age, which is a very positive point. But how do we confirm if he really is of this breed? First, we would need to find this John Watson who sold the calf to your husband. If he confirms the lineage and has documentation, it gets easier. Second, we can do a DNA test, but it's expensive and time-consuming. Gladys could hardly believe what she was hearing. If it were true, all those years of financial struggle would have a solution. But she also began to understand why so many people were interested in buying Colonel quickly and for low prices. "Dr. Nathan, do you think those people who showed up wanting to buy Colonel knew about this?" "It's very likely. Those who work with cattle recognize special characteristics even from a distance. But since you seemed unaware of the real value, they tried to take advantage of the situation." Gladys's indignation grew. Mildred Vernon and probably others who would still show up, all trying to take advantage of her ignorance for a profitable deal. "And now, Doctor, what should I do?" "First, let's try to locate this John Watson. If he's still alive and has documents proving the lineage, that makes things much easier. Second, I can contact some Karaku specialists I know for a more precise evaluation. Will that cost a lot? For you, it won't cost anything. I'm as interested in this case as you are. If we can prove that Colonel is a purebred Karaku Caldeano, it will be an important discovery for the breed. I can gain professional recognition from this. Gladys felt relieved. She had finally found someone who seemed genuinely interested in helping her, not in taking advantage of the situation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. From that day on, Gladys's life changed completely. Nathan began visiting her house almost daily, always with new books, contacts, or information about the Karaku Caldeano breed. Gladys, who had never been interested in cattle, began absorbing information about genetics, lineages, and bovine reproduction as if she were an expert. The first important discovery came when Nathan managed to locate the St. George Ranch through old town hall records. John Watson had passed away 3 years prior, but his son Marcus had taken over the business and still lived on the property. Nathan and Gladys made the 2-hour trip to the ranch on a Thursday morning. Marcus, a man in his early 40s, received them with curiosity when he learned they had come to ask about an animal sold by his father 15 years earlier. I do remember Harold. Dad mentioned that calf sale several times, said it was one of the transactions he was most proud of. Why was he so proud? Gladys asked. Marcus took them to a room at the back of the house where he kept his father's files. After searching through several folders, he found what they were looking for. Here it is, Colonel, son of Emperor and Princess, registered Karaku Caldeano lineage. Dad noted here that he handpicked who would receive this calf, because he wanted to be sure it would be well treated. Nathan almost jumped for joy. Do you have the parents' documents? I have the full genealogy. Emperor was a prize-winning stud bull that Dad brought from Montana. Princess was the daughter of another famous stud, the Iron Duke. Pure lineage, no crossbreeding. Gladys looked at the papers without fully understanding, but from Nathan's reaction she could tell it was valuable information. Is this good? Mrs. Gladys, this is excellent. With this documentation, we can prove Colonel is a purebred Karaku Caldeano. And look here, he pointed to a note in the corner of the paper. His parents were champions at exhibitions. Marcus smiled, seeing the veterinarian's excitement. Dad always said that calf would spring a surprise one day. Did your Harold never try to find out about the lineage? He never asked anything specific, replied Gladys. Harold was a simple man. He raised animals more out of love than for business. That's exactly why Dad chose him. He said he wanted an owner who would care for the animal with affection, not someone just interested in profit. On the drive back, Nathan couldn't stop talking about the possibilities that were opening up. With the documentation in hand, he could contact specialized breeders, arrange an official evaluation of the animal, even consider specialized auctions. Mrs. Gladys, you need to start thinking about numbers much larger than you imagined. Larger like what? With this pedigree and excellent health, Colonel could be worth between $200,000 and $300,000, maybe more depending on buyer interest. Gladys had to ask Nathan to stop the car. $200,000 was more money than she had seen in her entire life. It was enough to buy a nice house, invest part of it, and live comfortably for the rest of her life. Doctor, are you sure about this? I am, and I can prove it. I will arrange an appraisal with renowned specialists. If they confirm what we suspect, you will have in your hands one of the most valuable Karaku Caldeanos in the country. When they arrived back in Hope Springs, the news that they had left together in the morning had already spread. Mildred was waiting at the door of Gladys's house, clearly irritated. Where did you go? She asked, not even greeting them. We went to confirm information about the Colonel's lineage, replied Gladys, taking pleasure in seeing her sister-in-law's displeased face. What's this story about lineage? Gladys, you're being fooled by this boy. Harold never said anything about special lineage. Nathan intervened politely. Mrs. Mildred, with all due respect, we obtained documentation that proves the Colonel is an animal of very rare genetics. Harold probably didn't mention it because he didn't want to draw attention. Documentation from where? From the son of the breeder who sold the calf to Mr. Harold. Mildred looked visibly uncomfortable. And how much is all this genetics worth? Nathan looked at Gladys, who nodded. Between $200,000 and $300,000, possibly more. Mildred's face went white. $200,000? At a minimum, confirmed Nathan. Mildred left without saying another word, but Gladys knew her sister-in-law was furious. She had lost the chance to convince the widow to sell the bull for a pittance, and now discovered the animal was worth a fortune. In the following days, the news spread through Hope Springs like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know if it was true that the poor widow had inherited a bull worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Opinions were divided between those who believed it and those who thought it was an exaggeration by the inexperienced veterinarian. Gladys began receiving unexpected visits. Vernon returned, offering $20,000 for the animal. Other cattle buyers from the region appeared with increasingly higher offers, all trying to close a deal quickly, before other interested parties learned of the Colonel's existence. Mrs. Gladys, $50,000 in cash, money in hand, offered a breeder from a neighboring town. You can set your life straight and not have to worry about anything anymore. Gladys had learned to distrust generous offers made in haste. I'll wait for the specialist's appraisal. But what if these specialists say the bull is worth less than they're saying? You'll miss the chance to make a good deal. It's a risk I'm willing to take. Nathan had scheduled the arrival of 3 Carriacou cattle specialists for the following week. Dr. Edward Campbell, Dr. Sylvia Montgomery, and Dr. Joseph Ferguson were respected names in the field, with decades of experience evaluating elite animals. While they awaited the visit, Nathan advised Gladys on some special care for the Colonel. He improved the animal's diet, arranged a more comfortable small pen in the backyard, and ensured the bull would be in the best possible presentation for the appraisal. Dr. Nathan, what if they say the Colonel isn't worth that much? Mrs. Gladys, with the documentation we obtained and his physical characteristics, it's impossible for them not to recognize his value. You can rest easy. But Gladys couldn't rest easy. The possibility of having such a large sum was making her nervous. She couldn't sleep properly, couldn't concentrate on any activity. She spent hours observing the Colonel, as if wanting to memorize him in case she had to sell him. The arrival of the specialists was an event in town. Dr. Edward arrived driving an imported pickup truck. Dr. Sylvia arrived accompanied by 2 assistants, and Dr. Joseph brought sophisticated equipment for genetic analysis. Gladys was nervous, but Nathan reassured her. They are serious people. They'll give an honest assessment. The evaluation lasted almost 3 hours. The specialists examined every detail of Colonel, measured proportions, checked specific breed characteristics, analyzed the documentation brought from St. George Ranch. They took notes, photographs, and collected samples for further tests. Gladys and Nathan watched everything in silence, trying to interpret the evaluator's expressions. There were moments when they looked at each other with interest, others when they made technical comments incomprehensible to lay people. Finally, Dr. Edward asked to speak privately with his colleagues. They stepped a few meters away and had a discussion lasting several minutes. Gladys felt her heart racing. Mrs. Gladys, said Dr. Edward when they returned, I have news that may surprise you. Gladys's heart almost stopped. Good or bad? Excellent. Your Colonel is not just a pure Carriacou Caldiano. He is a direct descendant of Iron Duke, one of the purest and most valuable bloodlines we know. Dr. Sylvia added, Furthermore, he has maintained exceptional physical characteristics despite his age. He is a rare specimen even among Carriacou Caldianos. And what does that mean in practical terms? Asked Gladys. Dr. Joseph smiled. It means your initial estimate may have been conservative. An animal of this quality, with this documentation, could be worth between 400 and 500,000 Ries in the current market. Gladys had to sit down. 500,000 Ries was an amount she couldn't even properly comprehend. It was money for several comfortable lifetimes. But there's something even more interesting, continued Dr. Edward. Colonel is still of active breeding age. His genetic material has immeasurable value for the breed's preservation. Nathan couldn't hide his excitement. What do you suggest? There are several possibilities, explained Dr. Sylvia. Direct sale to a specialized breeder, placement in a specific auction, or even a partnership for controlled breeding. A partnership how? Mrs. Gladys retains ownership of the animal but authorizes his use as a stud. Breeders pay high fees for the genetic material, and she receives a percentage from each procedure. Doctor. Joseph added, this second option could be more profitable in the long term. A stud of this quality can generate income for several years. Gladys was completely overwhelmed with so much information. They gave her time to think over the options, and the specialists said goodbye, promising to send detailed reports on the evaluation. After they left, Gladys and Nathan sat on the porch, watching Colonel graze peacefully as if nothing had happened. Dr. Nathan, I don't know what to do. I never imagined I'd have to make decisions about so much money. You have time to decide. There's no need to rush. But what if someone shows up trying to steal Colonel? If they find out he's worth that much? Nathan had thought about that too. I'll talk to some of my contacts about security, and you might consider moving Colonel to a safer place temporarily. Where to? I have a friend who has a small property on the outskirts of town. A discreet location, fenced with good security. I can arrange for Colonel to stay there while you decide what to do. Gladys agreed with the suggestion. Better safe than sorry. That night, Mildred appeared again. This time she came with her husband, Cecil, and had a more serious expression than usual. Gladys, we need to talk. About what? About this inheritance. I think there was a mistake in Harold's will. Gladys felt a chill in her stomach. What kind of misunderstanding? This bull was raised by the family. Harold bought it with money he earned from selling part of the land he inherited from his father. Technically, this animal belongs to the whole family. Cecil, who was usually quiet, decided to speak. Gladys, we don't want to complicate things, but if this bull is really worth what they're saying, it's not fair that only you get everything. Harold's will was clear. I get the bull, you all got the rest. But when he made the will, no one knew the bull was worth so much, argued Mildred. If he had known, he would have divided it differently. Gladys realized the situation was getting complicated. Greed had awakened in people, and now everyone wanted a share of Colonel's value. Mildred, the will was made at a notary's office with witnesses. It's all legal. It may be legal, but it's not fair. We'll have to get a lawyer to clarify the situation. After they left, Gladys called Nathan and told him about the conversation. He suggested she also seek legal guidance to protect herself. Attorney Anthony Morrison was the only lawyer in Hope Springs and had known the whole family for decades. When Gladys explained the situation, he got straight to the point. Mrs. Gladys, the will is valid and clear. There is no legal loophole to challenge it. The bull is rightfully yours. But can they sue me? They can try, but they won't get anything. The most they can do is spend money on a lawyer to find out they're wrong. Gladys felt relieved, but she knew the family pressure would continue. She decided to speed up the process of moving Colonel to a safer location. Nathan organized the move to his friend's farm in the early hours of Friday. They used a borrowed trailer and transported him with as much secrecy as possible. Colonel was unsettled by the move, but quickly adapted to the new environment. Jerome Parker's farm was 15 kilometers from Hope Springs, in a rural area surrounded by hills. It was a discreet location, with good facilities to keep the animal safe and comfortable. Mrs. Gladys, the big fella will be well taken care of here, assured Jerome, a 50-year-old man who raised a few animals as a hobby. I have security cameras, an electric fence, and I live here on the farm. No one gets close without me knowing. With Colonel safe, Gladys could focus on studying the options presented by the experts. Nathan helped her understand the pros and cons of each alternative. A direct sale would be the simplest and quickest way to resolve the situation. Some breeders had already expressed interest after learning of the experts' evaluation. The highest offer so far was $450,000 cash. Participation in a specialized auction could result in even higher values, but there was a risk of not reaching the expected price. Additionally, the organization and publicity costs would be high. The breeding partnership was the most complex option, but potentially more profitable in the long run. Colonel would remain Gladys's property, but she would receive a fixed monthly amount, plus a percentage of the profits from the sale of genetic material. Dr. Nathan, which option do you think is best? It depends on what you want for your life. If you prefer to settle everything at once and have peace of mind, the direct sale is better. If you want to maximize profits and don't mind complications, the partnership might be more advantageous. Gladys had lived her whole life counting money, planning every penny. The idea of having a guaranteed monthly income for the rest of her life appealed to her more than receiving a large lump sum. Let's talk about the partnership. Who would be interested? Nathan had already made some contacts. Dr. Edward mentioned a biotechnology company that works with preserving rare breeds. They offer long-term contracts for elite breeding stock. And how would that work? You would remain the owner of Colonel, but he would stay at a specialized ranch with proper facilities. The company would pay a monthly fee for his boarding and reproductive use, plus a percentage of the profits from semen and embryo sales. How much would that monthly fee be? They offered 15,000 reis per month, plus 20% of the profits from genetic material. Considering quality semen can be worth 5,000 reis per dose, it would be a very good income. Gladys did the math in her head. 15,000 a month was already more than she spent in an entire year. With the additional profits, she could live comfortably and still have money left over to invest. And would Colonel be well treated? Better than ever. These companies invest heavily in animal welfare because they need to keep them healthy and productive. He would have constant veterinary care, specialized feed, a controlled environment. The proposal seemed interesting, but Gladys wanted to meet the company in person before deciding. Nathan organized a visit for the following week. Gen Cattle was an animal biotechnology company located in a town 100 kilometers from Hope Springs. It occupied an area of 50 hectares with modern facilities and cutting-edge technology for genetic preservation. Dr. Marcus Vaughan, the company's technical director, received them personally and made a point of showing them the entire operation. Gladys was impressed with the level of care given to the animals. Mrs. Gladys, our work is to preserve rare breeds for future generations. Colonel would be treated like royalty here. And how long would the contract last? For as long as he maintains reproductive capacity, we estimate between 8 and 10 years considering his current age, and afterwards he returns to you naturally. Our company commits to covering all veterinary care for the rest of his life, even after the reproductive period. Nathan was impressed with the conditions offered. Dr. Marcus, these terms are unusual in the market. Nathan, an animal of Colonel's quality deserves special treatment. Furthermore, we work on long-term projects. Our interest is not only commercial, but also scientific. Gladys asked for a few days to think it over. The proposal was tempting, but it meant being separated from Colonel for many years. The animal had become her constant companion, especially after losing Harold. Dr. Marcus, could I visit Colonel? Of course. You would always be welcome here. We can even arrange monthly or bi-monthly visits according to your preference. On the trip back, Gladys was torn. The financial proposal was excellent, but the separation from the animal weighed on her heart. Dr. Nathan, do you think I'm being too sentimental? Mrs. Gladys, feelings are important too. There's no point in making a decision that will leave you unhappy, even if it's financially advantageous. But 15,000 a month, that's a lot of money. It really is, but if you don't feel comfortable, we can look for other alternatives. Gladys decided to visit Colonel at Jerome's farm before making a final decision. The animal was well adapted to the new environment, but came running to meet her as soon as he saw her arriving. Hi, old boy. How are you? Colonel rubbed his big head against Gladys's arm, as he always did when he wanted affection. She stayed there for almost an hour, stroking the animal and thinking about both their futures. Jerome approached discreetly. Mrs. Gladys, may I give an opinion? You may, Jerome. This big fella has affection for you. I saw when you arrived how he reacted. If it's to separate from him for money, maybe it's not worth it. But it's a lot of money, Jerome. It is, yes, but there are many ways to earn money. True companionship is hard to find. Jerome's words kept echoing in Gladys's head. She had lost Harold just a few months ago, and Colonel was her only remaining link to the life they had built together. Parting with him would be like losing another piece of her history. That night, she had a long telephone conversation with Nathan. "Doctor, is there any way to get this money without having to part with Colonel?" "There are a few possibilities. We can arrange for periodic collections of genetic material without him needing to leave your property. Or we can organize controlled breeding with selected cows." "How would that work?" "You keep Colonel at home, but you receive breeders interested in using him as a stud. It's more work than the partnership with a company, but it allows you two to stay together." "And financially?" "It could even be more profitable. Each breeding with a quality cow can be worth between $10,000 and $20,000. With the fame Colonel is gaining, you could charge high prices." "But I don't understand anything about cattle breeding." "I can help. We can form a partnership. You provide Colonel, I provide the technical knowledge, and we split the profits." Nathan's proposal was interesting. Gladys would keep Colonel close by, continue learning about cattle raising, and have a significant income. "What percentage split do you think is fair?" 70 for you, 30 for me. Colonel is yours. I would only be providing technical services." Gladys was impressed by the young veterinarian's honesty. Other professionals would probably try to negotiate a 50-50 split or terms more advantageous to them. "Dr. Nathan, why are you being so fair with me?" "Mrs. Gladys, when I started working here, everyone doubted my competence because of my age. You were one of the few people who gave me a chance. Besides, discovering Colonel is going to give a major boost to my career. I'm already getting what I deserve." Gladys decided to accept the partnership with Nathan. It was the solution that allowed her to keep Colonel close while exploring the animal's financial potential in a gradual and controlled way. The first step was to improve the infrastructure of Gladys's property. Nathan organized the construction of a small handling pen, renovations to the paddock where Colonel stayed, and the installation of basic equipment for reproductive procedures. The work took 2 weeks and cost $15,000, paid from Gladys's funds. It was a high investment for her, but Nathan assured her it would be recovered quickly with the first breedings. While they were setting up the structure, Nathan discreetly spread the word in specialized circles that Colonel would be available for breeding. The response was immediate. Breeders from 3 different states expressed interest. "Mrs. Gladys, we already have a schedule for the next 2 months, Nathan informed her, showing a list with dates and values. "If all goes well, you'll earn over $100,000 just in this period." Gladys could hardly believe it. These were amounts she had never dreamed of earning. The first cow arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was a Caracou of excellent lineage, brought by a breeder from Montana who had traveled over 300 miles specifically for the mating with Colonel. "Dr. Nathan, is it normal for a breeder to come from so far away?" "For a stud of Colonel's quality, yes, it is normal. There are people willing to travel thousands of miles for the right genetic material." The procedure was successfully performed, and Gladys received $15,000 for the breeding. It was more money than she had ever seen together in her entire life. In the following months, Gladys's property transformed into a small breeding center. Breeders arrived regularly bringing selected breeding stock. Nathan coordinated the procedures, and Gladys learned about the business day by day. Colonel seemed to like the new routine. He was well fed, with constant veterinary monitoring and regularly exercising his reproductive functions. His physical condition improved even further, surprising even Nathan. "Mrs. Gladys, Colonel is rejuvenating with this activity. I've seen 10-year-old studs with worse performance than his." The monthly profits varied between 20 and 40,000 Rs, depending on the number of procedures performed. Gladys opened a bank account specifically for the earnings from Colonel and hired an accountant to organize the tax aspects of the business. Colonel's fame spread quickly in specialized circles. Articles about him were published in industry magazines, and Nathan gained recognition as the veterinarian responsible for the discovery. Purchase offers kept coming, but Gladys had already decided she would not sell the animal. The transformation in Gladys's life was complete. In a few months, she went from a poor widow to a businesswoman in the bovine reproduction industry. She renovated the house, bought new furniture, and finally achieved the comfort she had always wanted. But most importantly, she kept Colonel nearby. Every morning before starting the day's activities, she spent time with the animal, talking and petting him. It was her way of thanking him for the change he brought to her life. Mildred and Cecil tried to reconnect when they saw their sister-in-law's prosperity, but Gladys kept a polite distance. She held no grudge, but she also didn't forget how they tried to take advantage of the situation when they thought she was vulnerable. "Gladys, it's so good to see you doing so well," Mildred said during an unannounced visit. "Thank you, Mildred. You know, I always knew that Bull was special. Harold mentioned his lineage to me a few times." Gladys smiled ironically. "Funny you didn't mention that when you wanted to convince me to sell him for 300 rees." Mildred was left speechless and left embarrassed. From that day on, she avoided showing up at Gladys's house uninvited. Nathan established his reputation in the region and managed to significantly expand the clinic's clientele. The discovery of Colonel opened doors he never imagined he would achieve so early in his career. "Dr. Nathan, have you ever thought about moving to a bigger city?" "Mrs. Gladys, here in Hope Springs I have everything I need. A good work partnership, professional recognition, a quiet life. Why complicate things?" The partnership between Gladys and Nathan grew stronger over time. She learned about genetics and reproduction. He gained practical experience with elite animals. It was a professional relationship that turned into a solid friendship. Jerome, the owner of the farm where Colonel stayed temporarily, became a regular supplier of feed and supplements for Gladys's property. He also ended up getting interested in specialized breeding and bought some breeding stock to start his own herd. "Mrs. Gladys, it was an honor to help at the beginning of this story. Who would have thought that bull hidden on my farm was worth a fortune? Jerome, if it weren't for your help during that difficult time, I might not have been able to keep Colonel safe. I will always be grateful for that." The Gen Cattle Company kept in touch, always expressing interest in a possible future partnership. Dr. Marcus occasionally visited Gladys's property to monitor Colonel's development and keep the door open for negotiations. "Mrs. Gladys, our offer still stands whenever you wish to consider it." "Dr. Marcus, for now I am satisfied with the current situation, but who knows in the future?" She kept the option open, but became increasingly convinced she had made the right choice. The breeding income was exceeding initial expectations, and she didn't have to part with Colonel. 1 year after the first evaluation by the experts, Gladys organized a small celebration at her property to commemorate the success of the venture. She invited Nathan, Jerome, Dr. Edward, and other professionals who had helped her during the process. "A toast to Colonel," proposed Dr. Edward, raising his glass, and to Mrs. Gladys, who knew how to recognize the value she had without letting herself be fooled by opportunists. "Actually," replied Gladys, "the toast should be to my husband Harold, who had the wisdom to choose Colonel and the generosity to leave him to me." It was an emotional moment. Gladys remembered all the difficulties she faced in the first year after losing Harold, when everyone laughed at the widow who had inherited only a horned bull. Now, 2 years later, she was the owner of one of the most valuable breeding bulls in the country, had a monthly income higher than many urban professionals, and had earned respect in the community. But most importantly, she kept by her side the companion Harold had left to look after her. Colonel, oblivious to all the celebrations, grazed peacefully in the renovated paddock, strong and healthy at 17 years old. Occasionally he lifted his head toward the party, as if he knew he was the guest of honor. "You saved my life, old friend," murmured Gladys, watching the animal in the light of the full moon. The answer came in the form of a soft moo, almost as if Colonel understood and approved of the course their lives had taken together. 3 years after that memorable day when Nathan first examined Colonel, Gladys's property had become a regional reference for elite cattle breeding. Breeders from various states maintained regular contact, some booking dates months in advance. Gladys, at 73, had transformed into a respected agribusiness entrepreneur. She attended specialized fairs, gave lectures on preserving rare breeds, and was consulted by other breeders on genetic matters. "Who would have thought I'd become a cattle expert at this age?" she would comment, flipping through technical magazines she now understood perfectly. Nathan had married Jennifer, the librarian who helped Gladys with the initial research on Colonel. The couple built a house on the plot next to Gladys's property, maintaining both the professional partnership and personal friendship. Colonel, despite being 20, maintained surprising vitality. He remained reproductively active, and his offspring spread across the country confirmed the exceptional quality of his genetics. Some of his sons were already being used as breeding bulls, multiplying the value of the lineage. Dr. Nathan, how long can Colonel continue his breeding activity? With the care he receives and his privileged genetics, he could easily reach 25. I've seen cases of bulls maintaining activity until that age. Gladys's financial sustainability was secured. Besides the regular income from Colonel, she had invested part of the profits in conservative applications that generated additional earnings. Her life was comfortable and peaceful, exactly as she had always dreamed. Mildred and Cecil had left Hope Springs 2 years prior, moving to another town where no one knew the story of the poorly planned inheritance. Gladys learned of the move from neighbors, but didn't make a point of saying goodbye. Some resentments take time to heal completely. The relationship with the other family members gradually improved. Harold's children from his first marriage, who initially supported Mildred's challenge, publicly acknowledged that their father had made the right choice in leaving Colonel to Gladys. "Aunt Gladys, Father always said you were the most honest person he knew. Now we understand why he entrusted Colonel to your care," said Robert, the eldest son of Harold, during a reconciliation visit. Hope Springs took pride in having one of the country's most valuable herds within its territory. Colonel's fame attracted visitors and researchers, boosting the local economy with lodging, food, and various services. The town hall even proposed creating a rural tourism project, with Gladys's property as one of the attractions. She politely declined, preferring to maintain privacy and focus on the breeding work. Dr. Edward Campbell, one of the specialists who originally evaluated Colonel, published a book on the preservation of Brazilian cattle breeds, dedicating an entire chapter to the story of the Hope Springs miracle as the discovery of Colonel became known. "Mrs. Gladys, would you like to write the preface for the book? Your perspective on this whole experience would be very valuable." "Dr. Edward, I'm not a writer, but I can tell my story for someone to write down for me." The book became a reference in academic circles and helped solidify Gladys's reputation as an example of successful genetic preservation. Universities began including her case in studies on agribusiness and rural entrepreneurship. Nathan defended his master's thesis at the State University with research on Colonel's lineage. Gladys was present at the defense, proud to see the young man who helped her gaining academic recognition. "Dr. Nathan, or rather, Master Nathan now, thank you so much for everything you did for me and for Colonel. Mrs. Gladys, you're the one who changed my life by giving me the opportunity to work with an exceptional animal. I should be thanking you." The property had expanded. Gladys bought neighboring land and built more sophisticated facilities to receive the breeding cows that came for reproduction. She hired 2 employees to help with daily care and an accountant to manage the financial aspects of the business. Jerome became a minority partner in the venture, providing not only feed and supplements, but also transportation and lodging services for visiting breeders. His property turned into a kind of rural hotel, specialized in hosting people from the cattle industry. Mrs. Gladys, who would have thought that favor of hiding Colonel at my place would turn into such a good business partnership? Jerome, you were crucial in the most difficult moment. It's only fair you share in the prosperity too. Vernon, the first buyer who appeared offering low prices for Colonel, tried to reconnect when the animal's fame spread. Gladys received him politely, but made it clear she had no interest in doing business with someone who tried to take advantage of her initial vulnerability. "Mrs. Gladys, I was just making a normal business offer. I didn't know the animal's real value." Vernon, honest people make fair offers, even when they could take advantage of others' ignorance. You showed your character in that first conversation. Jen Cattle remained interested in Colonel, but by now recognized that Gladys had made the right choice by keeping the animal under her care. Dr. Marcus visited occasionally to monitor the development of Colonel's offspring and maintain a business relationship. "Mrs. Gladys, I confess that initially I doubted you could manage an enterprise of this level. I was completely mistaken." "Dr. Marcus, Underestimating people based on age or appearance is a mistake many people make. Lucky for me, they underestimated. Jennifer had left her job at the library to work in the administration of Gladys's property. She handled the breeding schedule, contracts with breeders and client relationships. She was a dedicated employee who became Gladys's right hand in managing the business. Mrs. Gladys, I never thought my experience organizing books in the library would be useful for organizing a cattle business. Jennifer, organization and attention to detail are important in any field. You brought exactly what I needed. Gladys's success inspired other people in the region to better investigate the animals they owned. Some discovered valuable lineages in their herds, creating a small movement to value the local livestock. Nathan became the most sought-after veterinarian in the region, specializing in evaluating animals with special genetics. He opened a second clinic and hired assistants to meet the growing demand. Dr. Nathan, you've become a celebrity around here. Mrs. Gladys, it all started with Colonel. If it weren't for that first exam you asked me to do, I probably would have given up on my career here in town. By this time, Colonel had already sired more than 200 descendants spread across the country. His genetics were preserved and multiplied, ensuring the continuity of the Caracou Caldeano lineage for future generations. Gladys kept in touch with many of the breeders who had acquired Colonel's offspring. She received photos and reports on the animal's development, proudly following the expansion of her bull's genetic family. Look, Colonel, she would say, showing the photos to the animal, your children are spread all over the United States. You've become the father of a dynasty. Colonel would respond with his characteristic low, as if he understood the importance of his genetic legacy. At 75, Gladys was thinking about the future of the property. Nathan and Jennifer had expressed interest in gradually taking over the management of the business, allowing her to retire while retaining ownership of Colonel. Dr. Nathan, when the time comes, I want to be sure that Colonel will continue to be well cared for. Mrs. Gladys, you can be absolutely at ease. Colonel will always be treated like the king he is. The partnership had evolved into something closer to a family relationship. Nathan and Jennifer were like adoptive children to Gladys, and she was like a mother to the couple. It was natural for them to carry on the work they had built together. Gladys began to gradually divide the business responsibilities, keeping strategic decisions but delegating daily operations. It was a smooth transition that respected both her age and her desire to remain involved. Colonel's 21st birthday was celebrated with a special party at the property. Breeders, veterinarians, researchers, and local authorities attended the event, which celebrated not just the animal, but all the transformation his discovery brought to Hope Springs. Colonel is not just an exceptional sire, Dr. Edward addressed the guests. He is a symbol of the importance of preserving our genetic heritage and valuing the wisdom of the simple people who care for our livestock. Gladys was moved by the tributes. In 21 years of companionship, Colonel had been a companion, a financial savior, and a source of personal fulfillment. Much more than an animal, he was family. Colonel, she whispered, petting the bull's head after the party, thank you for changing my life. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the greatest treasures are right in front of us, waiting only for us to have the wisdom to recognize them. The reply came in the form of a gentle low and a serene gaze, as if Colonel knew exactly what she was feeling in that special moment. The following years brought consolidation and international recognition for the work developed on Gladys's property. Foreign breeders began showing interest in Colonel's genetics, opening possibilities for exporting genetic material. Mrs. Gladys, we have proposals from countries in Europe, informed Nathan, showing correspondences that arrived regularly. Colonel becoming famous worldwide, who would have thought? His lineage is being recognized as one of the purest preserved outside the original historical herds. It's an extraordinary achievement. Gladys authorized some semen exports for genetic preservation programs abroad, but always with strict contractual clauses ensuring the material would be used only for scientific and conservation purposes. The property received international certification as a genetic preservation center, a recognition few establishments in the United States possessed. It was a source of pride for Hope Springs to have a world-class facility within its territory. Nathan defended his doctoral dissertation, with research on the preservation of bovine breeds from the United States, becoming one of the country's leading authorities on the subject. Gladys attended the thesis defense, proud to see the inexperienced boy she had known become a renowned doctor. "Dr. Nathan, you've gone further than I could have imagined when we first met." "Mrs. Gladys, everything I've achieved is because you believed in my work when no one else did. I will never forget that." The friendship between them had withstood time and success. It was based on mutual respect, trust, and sincere gratitude for what they had built together. Jennifer gave birth to the couple's first child, a boy named Harold, in honor of Gladys's late husband. It was a way of keeping alive the memory of the man who had made everything possible by carefully choosing Colonel decades before. "Mrs. Gladys, we would like you to be Harold's godmother." "It would be an honor," she replied, moved by the invitation. The baptism took place in the little church of Hope Springs, with Colonel grazing peacefully in the nearby paddock. It was symbolic to have the animal that changed their lives nearby during that special moment. Gladys, at 78 years old, maintained surprising clarity and energy. She continued to be involved in important business decisions, but had learned to delegate and trust in the competence of Nathan and Jennifer. "Dr. Nathan, I'm thinking of formalizing our partnership in a succession contract. When I'm no longer here, I want to ensure you can continue the work." "Mrs. Gladys, I don't like to talk about this, but I understand the importance of planning for the future." "It's necessary. Colonel can live up to 30 years. Someone needs to care for him when I no longer can." The succession contract was carefully drafted, ensuring that Nathan and Jennifer would have management rights over the property and businesses related to Colonel, but always respecting Gladys's expressed wishes regarding the animal's treatment. Colonel, at 24 years old, began showing natural signs of aging. He still maintained occasional reproductive activity, but his pace had slowed. Gladys closely monitored his condition, ensuring all necessary care for his dignified old age. "My old friend, we're growing old together," she would say during her daily visits to the paddock. "But what an incredible journey we've had, haven't we?" The animal responded with his usual affection, demonstrating the bond that had grown between them over the years. It was a special relationship, based on mutual trust and companionship. Jen Cattle proposed creating a cryogenic preservation program for Colonel's genetic material, ensuring his lineage could be reproduced even after his natural passing. Gladys agreed with the proposal, seeing it as a way to eternalize the animal's legacy. "Dr. Marcus, I want to make sure the material will be used only for breed preservation, not for predatory commercial purposes." "Mrs. Gladys, we have strict protocols for that. The material will only be available for internationally approved scientific programs. The creation of the genetic bank was reported in specialized magazines all over the world. Colonel had officially become a world genetic heritage, a recognition few domestic animals achieve. Hope Springs organized an official ceremony recognizing Gladys as an honorary citizen and Colonel as municipal heritage. It was the town's way of honoring those who had put the municipality's name on the map of the global cattle industry. "Mrs. Gladys," said the mayor during the ceremony, "you turned a simple inheritance into a discovery that benefited not only our town, but the preservation of our national genetic heritage." "Mr. Mayor, I just took loving care of what my husband left for me. The rest happened naturally." Gladys's modesty impressed everyone who knew her. Even with all the success and recognition, she maintained the simplicity and humility that had always characterized her. Nathan was invited to give lectures at universities abroad about the Colonel case. His presentations always included special emphasis on the importance of Gladys in preserving the animal. "Mrs. Gladys is an example of how folk wisdom can be more effective than all modern technology," he would say in his lectures. She intuitively recognized the value of what she had and had the courage to protect her conviction. The work developed on Gladys's property inspired public policies for animal genetic preservation in several states across the United States. Her case had become a model for how private initiative can contribute to the conservation of the national heritage. Gladys received letters from breeders all over the world, thanking her for preserving Colonel's lineage. Many reported that the animal's sons and grandsons had saved breeding programs that were in difficulty. "Look, Colonel," she would show the letters to the animal. "Your offspring are helping breeders in places we don't even know where they are. You've become more important than I could have imagined." Colonel's 25th anniversary was celebrated simply, respecting the animal's advanced age. Only close family was present: Nathan, Jennifer, little Harold, and some close friends like Jerome. 25 years of companionship, reflected Gladys, watching Colonel graze slowly at sunset. "Thank you for being the best gift Harold could have left me." It was a moment of gratitude and reflection on everything they had lived through together, from the neighbors' laughter when she walked with the ox down the dusty streets to the international recognition of the animal's genetic importance. Nathan had completely taken over the technical management of the business, allowing Gladys to focus solely on enjoying Colonel's company. It was a peaceful and dignified old age for both of them. "Dr. Nathan, I have one last important thing to discuss with you." "You can speak, Mrs. Gladys." "When Colonel passes, I don't want him to be replaced by another breeding bull. I want the property to become a center for studying his lineage, preserving his memory. That's a beautiful idea. We can create a museum and research center in his honor." "Exactly. So future generations can learn about the importance of preserving our genetic heritage." The decision was made. The property would be transformed into the Colonel Institute for Bovine Genetic Preservation, keeping alive the legacy of the animal that had changed their lives. Gladys, at 80 years old, remained lucid and active, overseeing the first projects for the creation of the institute. In them, she saw the final fulfillment of a journey that had begun with tears and mockery, but ended with recognition and achievement. Colonel, even at 26 years old, maintained the dignity and affection that had always characterized him. He was an exceptional animal not only for his genetics, but for the special personality that had won over everyone who knew him. "My dear companion," Gladys would say every morning when visiting him in the paddock, "thank you for teaching me that life's greatest treasures sometimes come disguised as simple things." The answer always came in the form of a soft moo and a loving gaze, as if Colonel perfectly understood the gratitude of his human companion. That is how one of the most beautiful stories of Hope Springs ended, with an 80-year-old widow and a 26-year-old bull living out their final years together, surrounded by the affection of a chosen family and the recognition of having preserved something precious for future generations. The journey that had begun with laughter and scorn ended with tears of gratitude and pride for a life well lived and a legacy well built. End of story. Now, tell us what you thought of this moving story of overcoming and recognition. Do you believe Gladys made the right decisions by trusting her intuition? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.